Hey everybody, welcome back to the Jesus and a Dream podcast, where we believe with Jesus and a Dream, anything is possible, nothing is impossible, and the possibilities are endless. I'm Caleb, this is Zach.
Hey guys.
We want you to enjoy life and build God's kingdom. We have the number, or the top 1% step maker in the world with us again.
I'm back, baby.
Luke Eaton with a world record, 35,000 steps. I don't know if that's true. Fact check me.
It's not.
All right.
There's a record in the world. So
The most I
world
did
record.
was 65K in a day.
65,000?
That was when I ran
What were you
31
doing?
miles.
Oh, okay. Oh, yeah. He also ran an ultra marathon.
Amazing.
All of that good stuff. This is episode number 2. But we're going to talk about something similar, but maybe some other stuff. Go back and watch the Run for Your Lives little short film that we did. Go back and watch episode 1. Go watch the episode where his wife, Alyssa, is on it, if you haven't listened to that. We're going to jump right into this. The other day we were hanging out. You said something to me that is surprising, since you have ran an ultra marathon. You've run 31 miles at one time. You told me being a parent is the hardest thing you've ever done in your life. Do you stand by that?
I stand by it, man.
Why?
Why do I stand by it? Wow, that's a big question.
Well, I guess as a person who is not yet a father, I'm not yet married, and I've also never ran an ultra marathon. I can imagine why having a kid would be hard. I can imagine why being a father would be hard. I 100% have said I would say no to an ultra marathon every day of my life, but I would say yes to having kids. So that's a crazy thing in my mind to go, and I understand why. I'm not saying that, but like for discussion purposes, why is it the hardest thing you've ever done?
Yeah, I think that's just such a big question. But I mean, I get the great opportunity of being a stay-at-home dad 2 days of the week, which shout out to every stay-at-home parent, first of all, because like we're talking about, it's a difficult thing. It's a hard thing. It's definitely a challenge. And I think the reason why is I've done a lot of physical challenges in my life. And we talked about the last episode that running wasn't just physical, but there's other pieces to it. But the thing about that is, I think just the control factor is one of the biggest things, is that if I was running, if I was sick for a week, I wasn't going to get out and run. I would rest because that would be best for my health. And even if I miss a week of training, the rest would be worth it in the long run. Otherwise, my body's going to deteriorate. It's going to get injured. It's going to be bad. The thing about being a parent is there's no breaks. There's no choice. It's like a higher calling to it, that there is no breaks. There is no, I'm sick, I'm just going to stay in bed today because my 3-year-old and 6-month-old will not survive if I do that. And I think, that's just the most difficult part about it, is that there is a need that needs to be met, and you're the person that needs to meet that need. And if you don't meet it, something pretty terrible is going to happen. And I mean, as I'm just talking about this, you think about Jesus. There was a need that needed to be met, and he was the only person that needed to meet it. Not saying I'm Jesus to my kids, but I think there can be some sort of a connection or correlation between those two things. Of it's different when a difficult thing you can do, you have an option, you have a choice, versus I need to do this because it needs to happen. That would be one thing that makes it the most difficult thing. And secondly, it's challenging on a level that you can't practice or warm up for. Because obviously I've been married for 8 years. I've been in a relationship with an adult woman for a while now, and I feel like I've gotten pretty good at it. But in that type of relationship, there is a give and take. There is I want to do this for you to help you. I want to do this for you to help you and be there for you and to love you and to show that I love you and care for you. difference with kids, especially a 6-month-old, is they don't get to do that. Like, all they have going for them is that they're really cute and that you can snuggle them and their skin is soft, you know, and that's like all they have. And then they offer in return, besides that, like, hey, I'm going to throw up on you. I'm going to puke on you. I'm going to cry. I'm going to keep you awake at night. Like, all of these other things. And I've said this to multiple different people, but being a parent is the best way to fully understand like a selfless love. Like, where for my wife, I don't think about this often, but like, I know that she's going to do things for me, and I know she's going to love me in a way that, like, hey, she's going to bless me with a gift, or hey, she's going to clean the dishes because she doesn't want me to have to clean the dishes. But my kids don't have that understanding yet. Like, everything that they do is honestly just for them. And it's the selfless love of, I'm going to give everything that I have for nothing in return. And I think before being a parent, there's nothing that we do in our lives that there is such a trade-off that it's even, I mean, running, it's like, there was days where I'm like, I'm going to get more fit from doing this. Like, that was something for me personally. It's like, I'm going to live a healthier life because I'm doing this. And there was that. It wasn't just, I'm literally running this only to see people be freed from sex trafficking. Sure, I wish I could say that, but there's thoughts that go through my mind. There's nothing in my head when I'm parenting where it's like, oh, I'm raising you up so you can do chores when you're older and I don't have to take out the trash anymore. Like, never in my brain is that the thought that I have. So everything that I do is a complete selfless love, which I think is what makes it so tricky and so difficult. And if that's something that, again, you don't ever do until you get to that point. Like, everyone else that I feel like I've loved in my life and cared for, like, also has something to offer to me, versus where my kids, like now my 3-year-old, is getting to a point where it's like,
you're making him do the dishes. He's taking out the trash.
He does actually do the dishes. He does actually do the dishes. The trash, he'd pick up and be like, oh, this is too heavy. And then he'd just set it down and I'd have to do it. But even to the point now where it's, I mean, we can hang out and do things together, and that's like fun, and we get to talk. And even just that factor of it, go a whole day without talking to like any person that can actually talk words, and you might go insane. It's literally, there's a reason why, like, if you get locked in a dark cave, isolated, you'll go insane in a couple of days or even 24 hours, whatever it is. But when you're in a house alone with no other adults for a whole day with people that can't talk, it's a weird experience. It's not an easy one by any means, because it's like you crave that, a relationship in the way that you've already known it, and not in this new way of, hey, I just have kids that cry or ask for snacks, you know?
I'll jump in on this.
Yeah, because you're a father.
This is the new experience for me as well. Sebastian actually just turned 1 yesterday. So
wow.
Oh wait, was today Tuesday? 2 days ago. Thought today was Monday. And like, I was just telling Tori this recently, where I was like, there is a level of maturity that comes with being a parent that I was not like expecting, or like I was aware of, but not like aware of. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Because like, I think for me, I've always like sought after maturity, and that's just something that's been part of like my story. Is I'm always just like, I want to hear from older people. Like, what about life? What do you know? Like, I've always just being a missions kid and a pastor's kid, I've been around most of my life, just people who are older than me or adults, and not a lot of people that were my age. And so I naturally was like, always felt like I was more mature than people my age just growing up. But at the same time, I was always like aware of how immature I was. And so I was always like seeking more maturity. Anyways, all that to say, becoming a parent, none of that like helped very much.
Yeah.
And there's something about like just that experience of, like you said, like it is astounding when you just think about it. It's like a baby can't go like an hour with, like, if he's napping, great, he can get like 2 hours in. Past that is like the max amount of time that a baby could be like without direct interaction. And it's just like, it's wild. And so and there's just something about it that like speaks to the most, the most like basic human part of you, I think, is what I'm experiencing. And I want to say like the animal side of you, but that's not the right word, but the very like just physical, the flesh person, because it's like when Sebastian cries, I could rationalize all the things, but there is still a part of me, a very strong part of me that says, I must go and hold him. And that was like literally last night, he was like crying and we're like, okay, is it like dirty diaper? And he's teething right now. So we're like, okay, is it the teeth? Like, let's get him some Tylenol and like all these things. And then it was just not working for him. And so then I just picked him up and I just sat in the rocking chair for like a half an hour and he just slept in my arms. And I was like, I tried to put him back down. He started crying again. And I was like, I just need to hold him. And that's what he wants. And like, it was just very interesting where I was like, no amount of like, cause yeah, there's all like the parenting books and we read like some of that stuff. And it was just, there's something about it that, in my opinion, the hardest part is that because it is so just like, there's so much to it that is so bound to just being a human that I was not prepared for. Whereas most things in life can be solved with like critical thinking. I'll say that like critical thinking like plays such a big part in just everything in life where it's like, okay, if I figure this out, if I can research this, if I can time this right, you know, like all that different stuff. And then so much of that doesn't matter when it comes to it matters, but like when it comes to taking care of, at least for me in like the first year of experience, it was like, wow, I just need to, it just requires so much patience. And I think that's the thing where it's like, patience isn't something that you can rationalize into yourself. Like you can't, oh, I'm going to read this book about patience and then that will solve problems. This YouTube video is going to make me more patient. It's like, you got to get it. And like through the hardest part which is just pushing through the impatience. And like, I don't know. Yeah. That's for like me when I was say like the hard things, right? Where it's like, you can't, like last episode when you're talking about like, it's a clear goal. And then you're like steps to achieve goal. We will track our progress. We will get there. And it's like, that all goes out the window a lot of the time where it's just like play by ear. But
there's no practice or preparation that you can do. I mean, as much as people say like, oh yeah, read this book or do this. One, every kid is so unique that most of that stuff doesn't matter. Second, most of that stuff is literally just opinions on how human people think you should parent a child. But unlike, I keep using this example, but like we talked about last episode, you can train for a run. I didn't wake up one morning and run 31 miles, but I did go to a hospital and one moment I didn't have a kid and the next moment I did have a kid and there wasn't training, there wasn't preparation. It's like, oh geez, we just have this little person that we have to take care of. And there's probably been other situations I've been thrown into and like had to react in a way that hopefully I could do okay. But I think that's some of the difficulty too, is I think that happens as well in marriage too, where kind of everyone says, well, you'll never actually be ready. You'll never actually be ready, which I mean, I'm a firm believer in that you could date as long as you want. You still, I mean, if you're following biblical guidelines of how a relationship would work, you'll still never be prepared for what marriage actually entails. And same with kids, is that you could prepare, you could babysit, you could read every single thing online and watch every video. And then still when a kid shows up, you're like, oh my gosh, I have a kid now and I have to love them in a way that they feel loved and can even just simply stay alive. And there has been many moments where me and my wife is like, literally our goal right now is to keep them alive. But then from that, now entering into a 3-year-old, now it's like, well, now we actually got to like teach him stuff. Now he's got to actually learn. He's asking questions about things that make this even more difficult and really even just challenge me to have a full understanding of this is what I believe in. This is how we live our life. And I mean, I couldn't even imagine being a parent without biblical guidance and biblical wisdom, where it's like, I have something to go back on that I know is the truth, versus, man, if I was a person that didn't have that and I'm just looking to resources online and books to read, I mean, at that point, it's game over. It's like, that's so difficult. I couldn't even imagine what that looks like, where I'm trying to raise up and teach a person how to live their life, and I have no idea how to live mine in the first place. But
Yeah, I'm going to jump in here because I think you just brought up something very important in that I think for every single father and mother out there listening to this that just exists in the world, when you have a kid, you are now put into something that you have never experienced before. You cannot practice it. You cannot simulate it. Let's say that. There's a big academic word called epistemology, and epistemology is how you go about learning or how you go about finding answers. And I think this is an important distinguishment distinguishment? Is that a word?
Sounds like a cool word.
All right. Is an important distinguishment to make is that although you both have these experiences and that it was the hardest thing that you both have done and that there was no practice to it, how you go about finding the answers for parenting, I believe that there are better and worse ways, which is what you just brought up. And I do believe that who you are as a person fully determines how you will parent. Like, it is not just I go to the hospital and now I'm a parent. That is true, and that event happens, but you are bringing everything in your life with you into being a parent. And so how you approach the answers to this most difficult thing that you've ever done in your life is wholly determined to who you are as a person. And you two are both people I would look up to and go, you two, the way you live your lives outside of even parenting, how you treat me, how you treat your spouse, how you treat the people around you. And then I see how that translates into, and this is how they parent. And it's all connected in that way. And so I just want to bring up, it's not just like a phenomenon that is separate from who you are as a person, but everything that you are as a person is now being brought into finding the answers of how to parent. And I think there are better and worse ways to do that, as you were saying, like biblically. But I think there's also this piece of, and I'll let you guys talk on this too, of doing the work on yourself. Let's just say it that way of like, am I becoming more wise? Am I becoming more mature? Am I loving people well? And then hopefully that translates to my sons. But I think there's also this level of, and you talked about this on the last episode too, is there's just certain things that God alone can give you. And you talked about that with like a full life. But I want to talk about now, like the fruits of the Spirit, and maybe we can talk about this when it comes to parenting, are only things that the Spirit of God can give you, being love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. All of those sound like excellent. Like if I want to describe myself as a parent, I want to be a loving parent, a kind parent, a gentle parent, a self-controlled parent. So maybe you guys can talk a little bit about that of maybe some things that you can look at in your lives that you know like God has like prepared you for. And then to just make the question really big so then you guys can just talk and I'm just going to listen. What are some things that God has given you, like fruits of the Spirit? Have you seen those manifest and help you in your parenting? What are some things in your life that maybe you saw your parents do that have helped you in your parenting? And then maybe what are some things, whether it's your parents, whether it's experiences that you had, maybe it's situations that you had to walk through that were negative that you had to get rid of because you don't want that to be perpetuated onto your kids. So huge question. I'm just going to let you guys discuss it and I'm going to put the microphone down.
Can you repeat the question? No, just kidding.
What has God given you? What have you already had that's positive? And what do you have that's negative that you've recognized that you try not to do to your kids or around your kids?
I can start off quick. And I mean, just being a pastor's kid, I think that simply the fact that I saw, so pastor's kid and missionary kid. So the fact that I saw my dad do like something dramatic, which now that I'm just in the beginning stages of parenthood, he took a family of 4 to China. And like, I was always like, that was crazy. And then the more I'm just like getting older, I was like, that was really crazy. Yeah. And so just like that example, and then also him becoming a pastor after that, and just like that concept of him just being a spiritual leader and more than saying I'm a spiritual leader for the family, but I'm a spiritual leader for like whatever sphere of influence is around me as much as I can. And I think that I want to take that from my dad. And I think it also being a parent, when I feel like there's so many times in the Bible and Jesus says like, honor your father and mother. And like, I see that a lot. And that's just always been a thing where there's just disrespect for parents and disrespect, from like, especially like teenagers. And then you're always just like, oh, yep. Yeah. You should honor your father and mother. And it's like, now that I'm a parent, I was like, whoa, well, now for just 1 year, I have taken care of him. Like you said, I got nothing in return except that I got to hold him, which is fantastic. And now he's almost walking and it's so exciting. But I was like, that he's not, I'm not getting like money for this. I'm not a paid babysitter, like all the stuff. And I was just like that, when he's older, then that's why parents are always like, I changed your diapers. Can you show respect? That whole like that idea. Yeah. And I was like, I understand that. And I think to bring that up a level, I think that's where God, how much has in the way that we take care of children, and they literally are unaware and actually have no memory of all the stuff that we do in those first couple of years. How much is that the same that God has done for us that we either have no memory of or not aware of? Mm-hmm. And then we come around and we're like ungrateful of it. And God's like, show me some respect, bro. Like yeah. You don't even know what I've done for you. And like, so I'm just thinking about like, honor father, mother. That's something that I know, like I want to do for my dad now that I like am understanding more of just the fact that he was such a strong spiritual leader, and I want to like honor him in that and take that into my own life and say, because I'd love to tell Sebastian like, hey, here's what we do, why we do it. And that's what grandpa did too. And I just think that's like a cool thing to see, because I know that my dad's mom has been, and she has like, just been in prayer from like forever. And it's just, and I know that like, that's what my dad said is like, because my whole dad's side of the family is just all, for the most part, just really strong Christian people that are active in their faith, active in their churches. And it's like, just from one person at the head of the family praying endlessly for kids and extended family. And so I was like, I want to take that too. And just continue. And I think it seems like something when we talked last episode about when you don't see blessings, and it's like, what are those blessings? Can you list them on an itemized sheet, please? And it's like, some of those are like, your family grows large and is happy and close and like honors God. That's not something that is easily put on paper, but that is a blessing, I think, of being in prayer for a family, being in prayer for your own family. And like, that's just something I'd want to take. And the opposite of that would be, I don't want to like forget that. I think and I don't want to like disrespect my parents and forget all the, I don't know if spiritual inheritance is the word, but like all the work that they've put in. Now I want to like take part in that and continue it. And it's like, when you look at people who build generational wealth, literally and financially, they, the point is that like they build up wealth, they pass it to their children continue the work, build up more wealth so that their children can have wealth. And it's like, what is the spiritual side of that? And I want to keep participating in that like inheritance of blessings and stuff. But yeah, that's my first thought. So give you lots of time to think.
Yeah. And a lot more to think about. I think just that last point, is really interesting of like this inheritance and passing that down and things like that. But I think also in that, there's this album I've been listening to a lot, and there's kind of this intermission where he talks about like there's two ways to gain wealth, and that is either to inherit it and get this big lump sum like right away, which I think we can receive that. But then the other way is just compounding interest of like small deposits every single day. And I think that's the way that even if I did receive some stuff, which I'll talk about that in a minute, I think that would be my like biggest goal as a parent, that like every day there is some sort of small deposit into my kid's life that even if he forgets most of it, like at least there is something that is building up and just how he lives his life. And if specific memories are forgotten, I can definitely still see his life being shaped in a way that these things actually matter. Like what I do right now does actually matter. And I think you're talking about fruit of the Spirit, and I think in parenting, sometimes that's tough, because I would say some days I struggle and I feel like I parent from the flesh side of me. And there is frustration. There's been a couple days where I have to walk in the other room and literally, and this is the option either. And again, if you don't have this basis where there's so much going on, so much crying, so many things that it's like, dude, I'm done. And if I was doing this just out of the flesh, in those moments, I think that's like kind of like a human moment where I'm like, this is all I can take. And at this point, there's no more of me. And I could either stop there and get upset, react angrily, literally leave the room. Baby can't move. He'll lay there and cry as long as he needs to. Or I can regroup and ask for help. And in those moments, that's not asking help from my wife, because that's asking help from God and saying, hey, can you produce, I need the fruit of the Spirit right now. I need patience in my life. I need love in my life. Like mine is expended, and I need something bigger than myself in this moment to do this. And I mean, there's been multiple days. This doesn't happen every day, so I don't think I'm just like a terrible dad. But in all honesty, and I think this is something, again, you're not prepared for, because a lot of people won't tell you this. They're just like, oh yeah, kids, great, babies, awesome, love it. And then like once they have teenagers, they're like, oh yeah, I want to sell them. But for me, it's like there's days where I literally walk in the other room and I'm like, God, I need you to give me patience right now, or I'm going to do something I don't want to do. And I mean, every time that I've done that, he's shown up, and I'm able to walk back into the other room and respond with patience and love in a way that I myself would never be able to do. But that's the thing with the fruit of the Spirit. It's from the Spirit. It's not from me. And I think some people think that, have this misconception that the fruit of the Spirit is like something that we can do and practice, where I view it as something that we obviously need to receive from the Holy Spirit. And we can put ourselves in places and positions where we can be more open and receptive to that. But without the Spirit, we're not those things. And that's where it's like, hey, Lord, I need this right now. I need this to be the thing that I'm producing in my life. And the only way I can do that is through you. So I'd say that's kind of where the fruit of the Spirit plays into parenting. Obviously, all of those things are things that you want to be doing in your life. And I mean, that list, if you're ever struggling with how you should grow in your life, take a look at that list and see if your life looks like that. And then ask the Holy Spirit to help you in the areas that you're not finding success in. I think that'd be a great way to improve your life. But anyway, back to parenting. What I've received from my parents, I mean, I had a great childhood. I had two parents that loved me and cared for me and valued me, and had the great blessing of parents that gave up both chasing their dreams and careers so that I didn't have to go to daycare. I had a parent at home all the time that loved me, and like I'm so thankful for that they would then not only make the sacrifice of having a kid, but then also sacrifice and say, hey, I'm going to give up some of the things that maybe I want. And obviously having kids was a dream and a goal and something they wanted to do. But the fact that I always had a parent that was there at all times is something that I'm so thankful for now that me and my wife get to do. And honestly, we get to do it in a really cool way where both of us still get to do the things that we've been called to and love and dream about, but also still have this opportunity to be there for our kids in a way that it's not, hey, we'll see you in the morning and evening and we'll put you in daycare. Nothing against that if that's how you want to parent, but I'm just so thankful and blessed by that's how I was raised, and now I get to do that as well. because I would love to be the voice that gets to speak into my kids the most, and that they get to learn from. Second thing I'll say real quick that I took away from how my parents parented me, and I hope that I can live this life as well with my kids, is their ability to apologize. Because again, being the hardest thing that you ever do, you're probably going to mess up at it. You're going to make mistakes. And my parents weren't perfect by any means, but they knew that, and they were humble enough to have that understanding that they weren't perfect, and that when they did mess up, and honestly, end of the day, we were probably just being dumb kids, and like they got upset with us, but still they're at the point where they're apologizing for some of the things that they said or did, or how they responded to a situation. And that's the kind of humility that I would love to carry into my parenting, is that in those moments of frustration, in those moments of difficulty, in those moments of maybe even just misunderstanding, living my life out in a way that I can come to my son. Now that he's 3 years old, probably understands it, but where I can come to him and apologize and be like, hey, I'm really sorry. Like, Dad was not doing good in that moment, and I hope I hope you can forgive me for that. And that's not how I want to respond. That's me, and not a reflection of God or the fruit of the Spirit in that moment. Like, that was me as a human, and I am a human, but just being able to come back and ask for forgiveness, even from a 3-year-old. What I don't want to take away, or like what I've learned that I kind of want to change or get rid of, I think is maybe the most difficult question to answer. But I think for me, probably just the other side of that, being quick to forgive in those moments where there is frustration in my family, which I've learned more of as I've grown older and been out of it more, is that there's a lot of yelling, and there's a lot of, it can just get loud. I have 2 brothers and a dad and a mom, and my brothers and dad can get very loud at each other pretty quick. And there's a lot of things where I would say blame can get thrown around, and whether it be rightfully blamed or wrongfully blamed, that's something. And I think what I would love to do with my family and my kids is not live in a way of let's blame each other, but let's live, first of all, out of forgiveness and ownership for the things that we actually deal with. And I think that goes hand in hand with what I talked about before, but not you being the first one to understand that, hey, I messed up, I screwed up. I don't need someone else to point fingers at me. And that doesn't always have to be a negative, like very negative thing. It's just like, man, we want to continue to grow, continue to get better. And something me and my wife say now is just, we're a team. And if every part of the team is working well, then we're going to be moving forward. But if one part of our team is hurting, the whole team's hurting. So I think just staying in that mindset that this is no longer like, as a family unit, we're no longer working toward our individual success. We can, but if one person's hurting, it's going to hinder this, and this team should be able to come alongside them and help them, and not point out like, hey, you're struggling, you're failing, that's your fault, and try to move forward together, I guess, would be the biggest thing for me. Like, I just love the idea of calling our family a team, Team Eaton, and Jace knows that he's a part of Team Eaton, and we stand together in that. So, yeah, hopefully that answers those.
It's a good question.
No, it's a lot of good stuff. What time is it?
11:36.
You got all the time in the world, dude.
I know. I don't, though. No, thank you for saying all of that. I think that's all just really important for, again, like, I'll never know what it's like until I'm there. But knowing these things is like you're just adding more tools to your belt, allowing the Lord to work through those things. And I think it's going to be really good for people to hear this of, just hear people talking like this. And I want to say this, I guess, to end this episode, and I've said this before, but maybe you're a new listener. Maybe I just need to remind you. The reason that we do the Jesus in a Dream podcast is not so we can get on here and be like, this is what we know. And if you do this, like, you're going to be uber successful and your life's going to be easy. No, we do this. Zach and I started this, and continued it because we know the conversations that we have. Like, we have conversations like this off the podcast every time we hang out. Luke and I talk about life. We do life together. We have a community. Like, I have so many friends, and we realized that not everybody has this. And so some of the things that we talk about never go through your mind, or you're not able to speak with somebody in a dialogue. And so we hope that this podcast, as you're listening to this dialogue, that it's just the Lord, the Holy Spirit is moving in power in your life, because we're trying to do everything biblically, scripturally. Like, the only ideas we're pulling from are ideas that we have read in scripture, hopefully. And I think we're self-aware enough to go like, yeah, I don't know about that. But again, we're steeping ourselves in scripture. So all of these things to say is, like, talk with people about this. Talk with people about, like, what do I want? What do I want to be as a parent? Like, besides your wife, or besides your husband, because, like, I love what Luke said. It was like, Zach talked about spiritual inheritance, and Luke goes, now you've given me so much more to think about. That's important. That's the church of God. And that's why he's put us on earth together, is like, some people think about things you never think about. And some people can see things in your life that you'll never see. And these two are important to me because they're both people that I respect and admire. And I hope that you do too, if you're listening to this, but I hope that you can find these people. And I'll say this and I'm going to end. Something I found in my life is that if you ask a question in the right way, you will always get an answer. And I think some people are afraid to ask hard questions or deep questions or below the surface questions because they're afraid that they're going to be made fun of. I have never once in my life asked a person a question and they go, I'm not answering that. I don't care how old they are. Like, as a youth pastor, like, that was the number one way of getting, like, conflict resolution, was pulling a kid to the side and go, what's going on in your life right now? I would get crazy answers. And kids I never even met before in my life until that night. Everybody wants to be listened to. Everybody has something to offer. You'll never meet somebody who doesn't know something that you don't, if that makes sense. Everybody knows something that you don't know. Everybody. The most foolish of fools and the most wisest of wise. You can learn something from everybody. That's why we do this episode. I hope it blessed you. We love you. Luke, thanks for being on.
Absolutely.
Love you guys.
We'll
love you, the
time.
listener. See you the next time.